Hi everyone, it's Sarah from Funky Fossil here, and I wanted to make a short video to share with you some paper weaving that really wanted to have a try of with our new paper strip dies. So they're currently available through the How to Craft network, and I launched them on the channel with Tony just the other day. I think it was Friday. Yes, I think it's Friday. And it's a set of 3 dies that effectively cut different widths of strips from your paper and card. So in the packet, it looks probably a little bit dull. But the reason I wanted to bring this product out was because I just felt there was so much potential. I obviously use a guillotine, use a paper trimmer for cutting out my paper and card, and I struggle to get really tiny slivers of card that are even in width. So the smallest of the 3 dies will cut you strips of paper that are really narrow, add a lovely elegant finishing touch to cards, borders, etc. And of course that one die will cut you out 5 strips of card in one pass. The wider one of the 3 will cut you 3 strips of card, and it's been sized to work perfectly with our strip back sentiments, which we also have available on the How to Craft network. So that's going to, again, I often stamp and have my sentiments ready to go, but then when I come to trim out a smaller sentiment like this on my paper trimmer, I end up with all different kind of widths and sizes of borders. So the fact now that I've got a uniform size strip will mean that I'm going to get that perfect look every time. But of course, there's loads more we can do with dies like this, and paper weaving was one of the things that I really wanted to have a try with. I haven't done much of it, so this is very much a kind of trial and error. And obviously, it's going to be really quick and easy to get a whole host of strips of paper cut from your kind of scraps that you may have lying around, from your favourite paper pads that you're maybe even have 1 or 2 designs in there that don't really speak to you, but actually if you cut them up into strips like this, you'll be amazed what kind of different effects you can get. And to make this particular bit of paper weaving, you can see I've already got some of the strips here laid out on my glass mat. I'm using our pretty shabby paper pad, which again is recently released by Funky Fossil. A lovely kind of earthy, soft vintage palette with a little bit of distressing here and there, and some really kind of pretty background elements, some florals, some butterflies, but all really subtle. So this is designed very much to be a set of backgrounds that are going to work with lots of different projects. But because that colorway kind of has all been designed to work together in like muted tones, I am hoping, my plan is that cutting strips from that same pad is going to give me a harmonious look when I weave the pieces back together. I've seen some amazing work done with paper weaving where people actually kind of cut up a particular design and recreate it, or do some really fancy patterns. I'm just going to go for a very simple effect here, because what I'm really wanting on my card is a little bit of texture and the opportunity to combine some of the different colours that are in the paper pad in a way that's easy to do. So I've had already a session of die cutting and got lots of strips of paper already cut into one side here. And as you can see, I've just used, I think it's two of the papers from the pad, and I've just put the plain and one with a slight pattern arranged on the glass mat here. To do some paper weaving, obviously we're going to have to kind of put the strips horizontally over and above the paper I've got here on the glass mat. So we're going to need to attach it to the mat, otherwise I don't know what kind of trouble I'll get into. I've got a random roll of washi tape here, so I'm just going to adhere the tops of the paper to the glass mat, and that's just going to hold them in place. And of course the lovely thing with washi tape is it will be easy to remove back from the glass mat once we've got something a little bit more substantial with our design having kind of been woven together. So let's give this a go, shall we? I think what's in my mind, we'll see how this works out, is that I'm going to kind of go across ways with the slightly pinker and kind of browner shades of the papers. So we've got the kind of greens going vertically, and we'll have this different slightly different kind of tone of colour going horizontally. So let's see how we get on. And I'm sure you'll have seen and be very familiar with how paper weaving works. And it's simply a matter of going under, over, under, over, and just carrying on with that strip of paper. And you can work down towards the bottom of the strips here. Just you don't need to be at the top just to get that weave going. And we'll just get that strip going all the way across there, and then we can push it to the top of our weave there, and that's our first piece of paper in situ. Now it may make more sense, in fact I'm going to do that now. I'm going to just take this strip out of the weave, because you can see there isn't much excess on either side, so it's going to be difficult for the paper for me to kind of keep that paper as it's going across. There we go. See what I mean? So now I've just got a little bit more wiggle room on either side of the strips that I'm working across. So that's our first strip in place. So of course now the second strip, we want to go opposite to the way we put the first strip. So we're going to go over the first strip and under the second. And we'll do that. And I will speed the video up as I do this, just so that you don't have to watch me in real time do every strip, but hopefully you can see how it will come together, and quite quickly as well. And of course you'll get different effects if you use different widths of the paper strip. So you could have kind of wider and narrower ones, give you different texture. If you put some solids, some metallics in, every time you weave this, it will look different depending on the materials you use and the widths of the paper strips that you go with to create your pattern. So it's just literally a case of having fun with those papers that we all hoard. And for me, I mean, this won't have taken many papers out of my pad. It's a 6x6 pad. The paper strip dies themselves, I think they're about 17 centimeters in length. So again, they give you a nice kind of size to work with. And off we go. So hopefully you've got the idea. Let's put one with a bit of a floral in, going the opposite way. So that one started under, so I'm going to start over for this strip. And as you work down the cardstock, obviously the pattern starts to gain a little bit more stability, because you've got that kind of weaving starting to hold the papers as you go. So I'm going to just speed this up and carry on weaving my papers, and then we'll think of something to do with the pattern that we've created. Okay, so how cool does that look? I'm just loving the shades of paper from this weave, and it's just going to give a really soft and pretty look, I think, on the final card. I've got to work out what we're going to do to make the final card. But what I did think I would do, and what I often do if I'm doing paper weaving, is I'll probably end up putting it behind an aperture. So here, for example, is a piece of craft cardstock where I've die cut a heart, and then you can kind of have the weaving really giving you some texture and pattern in the background behind that aperture. But first of all, we've got to take it off the glass mat and kind of adhere it together so it has that stability. It should hold together a little bit better than it would have done at the beginning, because that weave should keep the papers together. So I'm just removing the washi tape from the top of that grid we've got there. And I think so what I'm gonna do is adhere the weaving to another piece of card to enable it to be something quite solid on the base of the card blank. And so as I'm looking at it here, I'm thinking, do you know what, I might as well take out this strip here, so it's a bit of a narrower piece that will fit on, I think this is a 13cm square of craft card. However, you can see we can lift this up now, and we can nudge the papers together just to make sure that weave is nice and close. And then let's just give them a bit of adhesion. And I'll use some red liner tape for this. This isn't massively heavyweight cardstock. There's not a huge amount of texture here, so any double-sided tape should do the job for you. I'm going to just try and position it along one of the upward strips. So that will hold them together. Let's go the same on this upward strip on the other edge. Just get those papers nudged up nicely. And we'll add another strip of the red liner tape. I have a feeling this might become quite addictive. Apologies in advance if it does. So let's add a little bit of liner at the top and bottom too. This shouldn't be visible from the front because we're trying to work along the strips that we've created. It's a clear tape, so I'm hoping, and of course remember we're putting this behind an aperture anyway, so these outer edges where the liner tape is sitting behind won't be visible at the front of the card anyway. But if you were using the whole piece of weaving, you certainly could adhere it in such a way that you're not going to see the adhesive in the background. So I'll be able to trim that edge off there to make the weaving sit nicely. Yep, sit nicely on the panel of cardstock that I've already got cut. So let's take the liner off, get this stuck down. So you can get these dies until the 24th of May. They'll be exclusive to the Fabulous How to Craft Network, so you can grab them there. And I've got lots of ideas of ways I'm going to use these. I think they're just one of those staples where, you know, I'm not saying they've like got the most eye-catching design. They create strips of paper, but from a time-saving perspective and the fact that you're going to get something that gives you that even strip for a sentiment or for a technique like this, I just think it will save you an awful lot of frustration. So you can see here that my adhesive is obviously now on the cardstock, so I can trim down the edges. I don't really need to do this other than wanting to make sure that none of the strips are going to peek out from behind the aperture. But if you were again wanting to adhere this down to a piece of card and use that as your main focal point, you could obviously trim these really neatly and give yourself an even edge. Oh, I really love the look of paper weaving where you've got all those kind of different uneven lengths along the edge, and it kind of gives it a really cool border. So that, I think, is going to stay in situ nicely for us. How pretty does it look? Really kind of rustic. So I know that I'm going to have it sitting behind an aperture. Now we're going to need to do some extra things to the aperture, because the tone on tone, it's fairly close. We need to create a bit more contrast, and then a few embellishments to finish our cards. I'll be back in a sec with all of those bits and pieces. Right, I've been having a look around at things that I think will give this card a lovely finish, and I'm going to add some white to the craft panel here with the heart cut out of it. And I'm going to use our Bokeh Circle Stencil, again available on the How to Craft network. There are 3 stencils as part of the strip back range. 2 of them are stripes, and this one has got these circles of different sizes, which of course, again, like the strips, you can use for so many different things. But my purpose initially of putting these together was so that you could actually do some lovely inking through them to create that kind of photographic bokeh effect. I've got some of the stamps by me, the white cotton pigment ink, and I've got my blending brush. And you can see this is a blending brush that I kind of keep for this white pigment ink because it's got a heavier consistency than the water reactive ink. So it's not now a brush that I would dip between the different ink pads. A bit like my embossing ink, I keep one brush for my white pigment ink. And tap it off the side because this is a beautifully rich ink pad, and I want quite a soft effect on these circles. They're spaced nicely apart on the stencil, so you don't need to worry or be overly careful about how you ink through them. You're unlikely to catch one of the other circles with your brush. Tapping off again, as you see, getting a bit of build up there on the glass mat, which I'll be able to use. And depending on how much or how heavily you want to create that kind of circle effect, I'm going for kind of a soft blur, but you can kind of, get that richer colour as you go. And I think one of the nice things about kind of white on craft is you get almost kind of quite a dreamy effect, don't you? I'm going to go both sides of this heart aperture. And we'll just get these. So it's going to give me some movement across the cards. And the thing with the kind of that bokeh effect, I'm sure you know, is that the kind of the blurring or the circles that are created by that refraction of light kind of overlap each other. So this is such a lovely look. You can just layer the circles over each other and kind of create all sorts of different designs. I can't say if I want to connect that. I don't really want to connect that circle at the bottom, so I'll leave it there. I'll put one here, smaller one. Trying to make sure I'm holding my cardstock as well as the stencil. The trouble is knowing when to stop. Not one of my strengths. There we go. But the idea of the kind of stripped back range is it's essentials. It's things that are going to enable you to create so many effects. But if you're a clean and simple card maker or a new card maker, they're the kind of stencils, sentiments, and dies that are going to give you the kind of the builder tools so that you can kind of get started and create a whole range of different looks. And either use them to extend your more kind of detailed focal points, or as I'm doing here, just use them in their own right to create the design. Let me just get this white pigment ink off my glass mat, because we know that will end up somewhere it shouldn't. And can you see that? Just it's not an in your face. My table's going all over the place. It's not an in your face look, but it is just going to give you something that breaks up the craft card. We'll lay it over our paper weaving. We can see how that's coming together. So I'm now going to want to add an embellishment to this design, and for me, I think this is going to work perfectly with our Luxe cuts, so our light creamy plywood poplar ply embellishments, which, as you can see, are laser cut, typically out of a piece of kind of A5, and you can see how many shapes I managed to cram onto the sheet. They come on the sheet for you, and it is a very, very easy and straightforward job just to pop them out. You could take them all out and have them in a tub. If you get some of our Luxe cuts which have more detailed and delicate designs in them, then sometimes it's easier to keep them in the sheet, and then you're not going to worry about them breaking or snapping in a pot of other embellishments. But these, you could just pop them all out and store them somewhere and have them on hand. Now, I think these look cool just in their natural state, with that creamy colour against the craft. I think we're going to need a third one, aren't we? Always like to have threes. Yeah. But let's add some colour to them and give them a little bit of a glossy finish so they pop off the card. So super easy to do. There's so many ways you can decorate these embellishments. You could just go straight with ink to them. You could paint them. One of my absolute favourite ways of using them is with the Wow embossing powders, because I love the finish of Wow, and that gloss of the embossing powder always creates what I think is a really special effect. So let me rummage out the right colour to go with our card. Right, well, that took me ages to have a rummage and a think, but the colours I'm going to try on these butterflies are Fresh Stem by Jo Firth Young and Natasha Davis. It's called Paint Me Golden. And they're both opaque marbling embossing powders. So one thing to bear in mind when you are looking to coat something like a MDF or a ply like this is obviously if you go with a powder that has a more translucent finish, you won't get the kind of solid colour coverage that you will with one of the opaque marbling ones, which can give you a great effect. Just it's something to be aware of when you look at the finish of the embossing powders. They have OM for opaque marbling, or they have T for translucent. So you kind of have an idea of what finish they're going to give you. I was pressing the ink pad down onto the butterflies, but I thought actually it's much easier to press the butterflies into the ink. Right, so what I'm going to do is scrap piece of copy paper. I'm going to sprinkle the Fresh Stem, and then once we've got that coat on, I think this Fresh Stem from memory has got some gold in it, which comes through really nicely when you heat set it. And quite often you can see there as I'm shaking the powder off, even with an opaque marbling powder, you're probably going to need a second layer. The alternative, of course, is to ink your embellishment with some colour and then put embossing powder, either clear embossing powder or another finish over the top, and then you've already got some colour down. So if you're not wanting the ply to show through, the colour of the ply, then you can always add some first and then add a bit of embossing over the top. And let's see if we can avoid chasing these around the craft mat too much with our heat gun. Just trying to see if I can find my pokey tool, because that would do that for me. I'm going to use the end of a paintbrush just to try and shepherd them into some kind of control. So let my heat gun warm up a little bit. Of course, the more layers of embossing powder you put onto your embellishment, you get that kind of raised enamel look, which I again think looks really pretty. I'll hold these up when they're melted. You can see how lovely it looks. So nice. Whoops. Definitely recommend either tweezers or a Bokeh tool to control smaller embellishments like that. So hopefully you can see that it's got a lovely greeny gold. Am I on my camera? There we go. A greeny gold shimmer to it. Beautiful. But I'm going to just add, I'm going to see what this Paint Me Golden does to the coat we've put on, because I like the look of this. I've obviously have used it, but I can't remember what effect it gives. It looks like it's got different variegated, some gold and frosted powders in there, so we shall see. And of course, when you're layering powders, you reactivate the powder that's below, and that kind of melts again. So the powders merge together. You're never quite sure what effect you're going to get, which I absolutely love. Right. Let's see. Worst case scenario, we'll go back over with the fresh stem. You can see this is a much coarser powder. Got some glitter in there. Oh, I think that's going to give a nice effect. And sometimes I do lots of embellishments in one go and just have a playtime making lots of coloured embellishments. But it's quick and easy to make them to work specifically with the project and the colours that you've chosen. So you can do either or, have a bit of a stash or work with them as you go. Oh, I like this. The question's going to be whether I need a third layer. Oh, look at the marbling on that. Beautiful. Right. Yeah, I think that was it's a nice overlay. You see, just it's almost given a kind of a floating gold speckle over the top of the butterfly. And the green and that kind of goldy hue, I think, will work really nicely with the papers that we used at the beginning. So we can start to see how we might place our butterflies, the extent to which they're going to kind of pop off the card. Great. Right, let's get a sentiment done. And then I think this card will be finished. So I've already, using the same paper strips, the same thickness of paper strip that we used for the weaving, I've cut a piece out of craft card, so it'll be the same colour and blend in with the card base. And we can put a sentiment on there. Shall we let's put with love, because we've got a big heart in the centre of our card. Let me just quickly grab an acrylic block. Again, you can do this in your stamping platform and hold the strips with your magnets, and then you can get that perfect placement. So you could get lots of sentiments stamped at the same time. I'm going to go for a white emboss. And I'm just looking here. I'm going to just have to turn off the camera while I dig out that embossing powder. Bear with me 1 second. Right, I found the bright white embossing powder still in my craft bag. And we'll ink up with love. Now, you won't always need the full length of the paper strip, but obviously if you stamp a sentiment towards the middle of it, then you've got options about where you might place it on a finished project. Just add the white. I got away with that. I forgot to use an anti-static bag, but I think we've managed to avoid too many speckles. That's going to look nice. Now, the only thing I'm going to do off camera is I'm looking at the card as it stands at the moment. Let me pull it back into shot for you. I'm thinking it's still got a lot of craft going on, so I think I'm going to add a little bit more white pigment ink around the heart in a kind of a bit of a blur, a bit of a halo around it, just so that it lifts it from being all too much in the same colourway. So I'm going to add a little bit more white ink. I'm going to put my card together, and then I will share the final project with you. And here we are with the finished project. I'm really loving how this one's come together. So we're just using all of the elements that come from our stripped back range. We've got our Luxe cut butterflies, we've got our paper strips, dies, we have got the stripped back sentiments there, and we've got the Bokeh circle stencil in the background. So literally, you saw how I put this together, paper weaving, giving us a little bit of texture and some beautiful colorways behind the heart aperture. All I've done since I turned the camera off was add a little bit of white pigment ink around the heart, just to help it stand proud of the paper weaving a little bit. And also I die cut a couple more strips from the same pretty shabby paper pad, but really nice and thin ones. So this is the thinnest of the three sizes, and I thought they just framed that sentiment strip perfectly. Again, tying the colours together. So I really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching and spending a bit of time with me at Funky Fossil. Please like and share this video, and also if you don't already subscribe, it'd be amazing to have you on board this channel. I've got lots of ideas and things I'd like to bring to you, and I'd love to see you again for another video. I will put the links to all of these products in the description below the video, and until next time, I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.